Sooners of Oklahoma at 12-0 and still looking for respect nationwide.
What is going on, Sooner Nation? Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Barry and Mac Show. As always, myself, Barry, personal trainer, sports forms coach out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and alongside me, former Sooner wide receiver, 2000 national champ, Mr. Damian Mackey. How are we doing this late night, D-Mac?
What's going on, B? Can you hear me okay?
Oh, I hear you great, man. Loud and clear.
Man, hey, man, blessed. Today was a good day, man. Watching the Dubs play. I didn't get to see any of the other NBA games. I was on an airplane from Cali back to Dallas.
So
NBA
you didn't
draft.
see the Clippers and the Nuggets?
Who won? Matter of fact.
The Nuggets won. Man, go back and watch the
Wow.
end of the game. I didn't know this. It was first buzzer beater dunk.
Oh, so
In the
I saw something. It was a
that
dunk
was
by
that was Aaron Gordon.
okay.
Yeah,
Wow, man.
ridiculous.
Both those teams are tough as nails. So fun series. And
Yeah.
that was in LA, right? Or were they in Denver?
That was, let's see, that was game 3. So they would have been I think that was in Denver. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Oh, no, this was in LA. This was in LA. Ballmer was
So
sitting
they
there.
got home
Yeah.
court back. They got
Yeah.
home court back. Okay, there it is. All right, doing well. Let's lock in. A lot to talk about in the Sooner world. A lot to talk about in the draft world, and of course, NBA is in full swing. My favorite part of the year, as it relates to NBA basketball, it's when they really let them play. And we'll talk
Mhm.
about how the game has changed for the playoffs. My Lakers. We got some problems. We'll discuss those problems. But man, that Houston Dubs game tonight, uh, I liked it. I like to see the
Yeah.
physicality, the athletes come out, and then really Steve Kerr outsmarting Udoka, and having a plan in place for the double teams that were coming at Steph in the fourth quarter. So let's get to it, man. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, man. Want to remind everybody before we hop in, shows brought to you by OU Insider, OUinsider.com. Go over there, get yourself a membership. We'll post a early link to the show. We'll be in there interacting with the board, talking about the NFL draft picks that Oklahoma was able to have today, as well as just all the stories around it. It was an interesting, intriguing NFL draft this year for lots of reasons, right? You didn't have the high level talent at the quarterback position. You saw a former Sooner go. I won't say anybody was surprised at how high Dylan Gabriel went, but maybe to the team he went to, and then considering who else was on the board, maybe a little bit surprising. But man, let's start with the Sooners, and no better way to kick it off than to rock with Danny Stutsman, who ends up going to probably one of the most perfect teams he could go to, right? If you were going to say, here's some spots for Danny, here are some teams that just fit who he is as a person, as a football player, what they're all about. It's a short list, and the New Orleans Saints are right at the top. Man, that they're a team that wants to be aggressive with pressures. They want to be athletic at the linebacker position. There's a little bit of precedent there with some Sooners having some longevity with the Saints at the linebacker position. Go back to Curtis Lofton, who played more than a handful of years there, had some really good success. So to see Danny, and that's where we'll start, DMAC, go as, I won't say as high as he did. I think he went about where everyone expected, right? It was round 4. Should have had this right. I think pick 1. Let's double check. I know he went in the 4th round, but ends up being the first Sooner off the board. A player who was a Butkus finalist, just about all of the right stuff. A guy who developed over a long period of time, had a very long runway, ebbs and flows, and a player who, this is one thing I'll ask: does he even get drafted, or at least this high, if Venables never takes over at Oklahoma? That's a real serious question. But he does well at the combine, and he interviewed well. He's a guy who just has it, and I think he is going to end up maybe being a better NFL player than a college player and potentially outshine where he was picked in the draft. Talk about him a little bit, DMAC.
Man, extremely excited for Danny. He went about where we expected him to go. I know preseason people, especially at positions like linebacker, it's not a position where your prowess and or acclaim and or accolades at the college level necessarily translate to the NFL level. Um, but I don't think people realize like Danny's a big, strong, fast, instinctual dude. And I don't know if he'll outplay his college potential in the NFL only because he was an All-American and he was an all-conference caliber guy. So it's not like, he was chopped liver in the college game. But I will say this, and by the way, I respect your take, but here's mine. I think he will probably go down as the second best BV backer or OU backer in the BV era, right? I mean, we've had
Wow.
studs be college. You're talking Rocky, you're talking Teddy, you're talking L. Mitch, you're talking T. Marshall, you're talking a lot of guys. Rufus, Alexander, a lot of guys came up. And then, of course, Lofton is a guy who was an all pro caliber backer in the NFL. I think Danny's a guy, the way the game is played now, the attributes he possesses and the skill set he brings to the table, I think Danny's a guy who can come, and obviously injuries and timing and things of that nature impacted the Teddies of the world and obviously the Rockies of the world. But it is what it is. What you did in college is what you did in college, and what you did in the NFL is what you did in the NFL. Some of the things that were Danny Stutz issues that we addressed pretty consistently here. We gave him his proper due because he was a dude. But some of the things that just the physicality of you know point attack football, that stuff where if you've got a true Mike or you've got a really good zero tech, really good three tech, right? You can cover that up better than OU was able to do, and Danny can really put his talent to use. I firmly and truly believe Danny's a guy that can get to a caliber of probably being the second best backer at OU since BV's been DC and or HBC. And so I'm excited for him. I think that he's a phenomenal fit for New Orleans. I think what they want to do, and then I think Staley went in as the DC and an attacking defense. You think about that, right? Because Staley, I believe, is the DC when Murray goes to San Diego Chargers, and Murray's Kenneth Murray, and Murray's a guy who depended on his athleticism at OU. Right. And of course,
Hmm.
didn't have the fortune of being in a BV defense. He was, dealing with some less caliber defensive leaders. Danny's kind of like not quite as athletic as Kenneth Murray is, obviously, but he is instinctual, right? And so I look forward to seeing Danny being used by a defensive guru, or I would just say a highly competent defensive coordinator who's going to get Danny going forward, who's going to get Danny blitzing, who's going to get Danny buzzing the flats, right? Danny's really good at sinking into the curl. Think carrying on those seam routes with the three receiver or the tight end. I look forward to seeing him. I think Danny's a guy who could play 5, 6, 7 years minimum. I think Danny's a guy who we'll see on some Sundays. He recovers a fumble or he robs a curl and pick sixes it. Or it's like there's some things that he's going to have some run throughs, right? He's meeting the running back in the behind the line of scrimmage in the B gap. Um, and salute to him, man. I think it's a good fit. I saw him tweet out who that we need to start creating that perception that OU produces ballers on defense again. And so Danny and both Danny and Billy, I think are doing a good job of getting that back off to a good start.
Yeah, they really highlighted, as you kind of touched on, his ability to generate pressure and create havoc up the middle. Right, that was where he kind of buttered his bread, if you will, for Oklahoma, and he really contributed to a Sooners defense that was much improved from 22 to 23 and then 23 to 24. and just being able to leverage what he was good at, being able to learn how to linebacker, right?
Yeah.
I think that was something that he talked about with Venables when Venables arrived, was he really didn't understand how to play the position. It was a little bit of see ball, get ball. There wasn't the reactionary component, recognizing scheme, all of the things that go into being a guy who is ready for the NFL.
Yep.
That's not something that you just athlete. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is probably a fair assessment, particularly a linebacker. You don't just sort of athlete yourself into that position at the NFL level and play for a long period of time, right? That's something where you you need to know the game a little bit, and you need to have good football IQ. You need to have a firm foundation of what the offense is going to do, especially being a guy playing in the middle and having to recognize and quarterback the defense from time to time. So I think Danny just has a tremendous upside, that even though he was a great player at Oklahoma, I could see him in this new sort of pace and space era of the NFL,
Yep.
right? Where you're trying to get all over the place. You need guys who are fast, who are mobile, who can move laterally. I think Danny just gives a team, any team, but particularly the Saints, just a tool to work with that is going to be invaluable in the coming future for what the NFL is going to continue to look like, particularly with the run game sort of having a resurgence, if you will. So I'm very curious to see how that goes. But let's talk about Billy Bowman, man. Billy Bowman taken by the Falcons not too long after Danny,
Yep.
and both of those guys went again about where we expected. I think Billy could have been a guy who, if the right team with the right value of him wasn't there, might have slipped a little lower, but I'm glad he didn't. I'm glad he was able to be another kind of mid-round, still very respectable guy who you're expecting to make the squad, but maybe not contribute early. And Billy was able to do that. I don't on the broadcast. Only thing that really knocked on him, DMAC, was missed tackles, and that was something that we had addressed on the podcast a ton. And it was missed tackles, bad angles. And outside of that, he's going to pick some balls off and be explosive with them in the open field. He had four, I didn't realize he had 4 interception return for touchdowns in the 23 campaign, which is just
He had
insane.
3 that year. He had 3 that year. He
3
had
that year, 4
one
total.
one the year before against OSU. I
Okay,
believe
that's
I
right.
believe it
That's
was OSU the year before.
okay. That sounds right. Either way, I know he was putting up big numbers in that
Yep.
regard. But to see him again, a guy who's a good athlete, be able to flourish, go to Atlanta where they bring in a new DC. They are going to I think it's Ulbrich, if I'm not remembering right. I
Is it
think
really?
they fired the guy last. Who was the
Yeah,
guy
yeah.
who was there a year ago?
I
They
don't know,
let
but I
him
know they
go.
fired him. Hmm.
Yeah, and they bring in Ulbrich. Right now, the guy in front of him was I was trying to look. Or I think it's Jesse Bates, a guy who's been in the NFL for a little bit, more than a cup of coffee. But Billy is an explosive athlete and a guy who can turn his hips, a guy who can get sideline to sideline. But maybe more impactful in the NFL at like a nickel position, or as I talked about, kind of playing that slot corner spot. So talk a little bit about Billy and what you expect from him as a pro.
I think the number one thing he's going to bring is versatility. Like you said, Billy's a guy who can probably go down into the nickel position or into the slot position. He's a guy they're going to probably have blitzing off the C gap. Interestingly enough, I didn't know he was 5'9". I always pay attention to the weight and heights when they do the official combine stuff because they give you the real deal. They'd come to me on Saturday mornings like, D-Mac, what do you want your your
Yeah.
height and weight to see? Yeah, give me 6'1", 193. I'm 5'11", 187 my freshman year. So to see he's only 5'9", I do think that it makes sense now, right? Billy's a stocky guy, very strong guy, weight room guy, obviously an explosive guy. Um, the game is such that you can be a 5'9", center field safety, so long as you have ball skills and you're athletic enough. And so just I think Billy's a guy who will provide depth. I think he's a guy who at Atlanta he could be a starter, right? He has the instincts and the athleticism to be a dude again. I believe some of our better players were penalized by a scheme and culture that for so many years was a cesspool that they really didn't have the opportunity to thrive in the same way. If they get to the right spot, Atlanta's going to be a team. Man, let me tell you, Atlanta's going to be salty in the NFC South. I think those guys and obviously Tampa will probably be the two top dogs going into the 25 season. And with the new Q taking over for Cousins, and they've got some really good talent at receivers. They got two really good running backs with the kid from Texas and then the bigger guy. They're going to be a team where Billy's going to have an opportunity, potentially, especially in that division, to play with a lead. Team's going to have to throw the ball, right? I think Atlanta went and got the DN from Ole Miss, or Pierce, I believe. They got the kid who they wanted to add pressure from the front four.
Yeah.
I look forward to Billy competing. I think we'll know pretty early on if Billy believes in himself enough, because he's gonna have a chance. It's not like Atlanta has an entrenched dude at the safety
100%.
position. They
Yeah.
don't, right? And
Yeah.
so Billy goes in there, is able again. The thing, Billy, I know it's your day, bro, but that Tennessee, you and Nico in the hole, that last play where if we get the stop, we have a chance, and he gave Billy the wiggle in the hole and he didn't touch him. That is the one thing that they said, hey, that's the one thing Billy has to correct. Billy goes in and shows that he can really just stay inside out, helmet half a man inside the guy, invite him outside and get a head across. It's a geometric principle. Billy could be a guy too, right? I think both of those guys were drafted correctly in a sense where they'll have a chance to start. I think both of those guys go to a franchise that's going to give them a chance to thrive. I think both of them are going to division. By the way, they're going to be playing against each other in the division. New Orleans is in the same division. And so I think they're both going to places where they're going to have a chance to be impacted. I think they got drafted as fourth rounders because those guys see them as potential starters. I don't think they're just special team potential players in those respective teams. I look forward to seeing Billy play well. I think he's another guy who's going to be making some big time plays. I wouldn't be surprised teams run that bang eight slant or post on him and he's getting underneath some of those. Wouldn't be surprised if he's jumping some of those deeper in cuts. And like I said, I really think he's going to be in a hole position, playing in a nickel defense in that whole spot, replacing a backer and being able to carry some of those slot guys running deep corners and deep outs and in cuts. So good for him. Really happy for him.
I agree totally on that. Whenever you see a guy who is like has that squatty build but kind of real strong, and they're very explosive on that first step, which that doesn't get him in trouble. I think that's the wrong term, but I always evaluated him as a guy who is a a more athletic version of Kendall Dolby than I ever looked at him as like an RSJ or a center fielder like a Peyton Bowen. I always viewed him as a guy who would thrive really well in close area space and be able to take up ground if the reaction time was very quick. His issue was being able to be physical on the tackling side, which is why I think OU never put him in that position like they did with Dolby, who was a little more of a more sure tackler at the line of scrimmage, and and did have some savviness about him with how he plays the position, and that's one of the reasons why he's so valuable for Oklahoma. Now, I do want to bring something up, and this isn't to rain on the parade, but those are the only two Sooners who get drafted today, and both of them are on the defensive side of the ball, which is great. But I think it does go to show you that there has been this level of player that has just been missing for the Sooners. And it's no coincidence that Texas gets some more guys off the board. Ohio State's putting massive amounts of players in the league this season. And it's not a coincidence that OU does not have those first, second, third round guys going off the board this year. And there were times on defense where they struggled. Yes, they have some young guys right now, but the better the talent gets, the more you get those first, second, third round guys, the better your team is going to be. And to not have a single offensive player taken is just awful, right? OU had one offensive player even get put on a roster today in Michael Tarkin. So where OU is a miss is just that upper higher end talent that these other teams that made the CFP this past year and also competed in it, did hit a level that Oklahoma just has not hit yet, DMAC. And I think those guys are currently on the roster. They do have players who are going to be that in the coming years, but there's not a whole lot of time to wait around. I do want to get your thoughts, just real quick, on a guy like a Tarkin, like an Ethan Downs, like a DeJoun Terry, Trace Ford, but more specifically just Ethan Downs to start this off, because he's a guy who, not in the Stutsman vein as far as like high performer, but a guy who made the most out of his college career. He ends up going undrafted and signs with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So my question, and more so comment, and this is just kind of solidifying what we have said about the defensive line, was that if Ethan Downs, a guy who is a fringe NFL draft pick, is the best, most top dog on your defensive line, you're not there yet. But don't want to take away from him getting an opportunity, and just want your thoughts on what you think he can do.
Before I speak specifically to Ethan, I do want to speak to the draft class in general, right? I think this encapsulates very well where we were, are going, right? And what the future outlook looks like. And then I also want to just touch on the transfer portal. In fact, let me start there. It's interestingly enough, how many players, if you watch the draft, most of you guys that are on the night with us tonight, I know you guys are hardcores. Um, I'd say probably 50% of the players that they actually showed the highlight, snippets on, they showed them in minimally
Two
two
teams.
teams
I noticed
because
that.
so much, transition and transferring and so much of that nature. And so interestingly enough, right, you see how many people are coming and going, which means you have the possibility to change the landscape of your team overnight. But I really want to hit culture. I really feel like this is probably the last class of players, and unfortunately, Danny and Billy Bowman are two really good examples of guys who came into a terrible defensive culture, and I think they should puff their chest out and saying, "Hey, whatever OU does here moving out, like we were guys who helped turn that page." Like I will always say, we were guys who helped turn the page. That 98, the Blake, Snelly, Gibbs era, we brought that Bob Stoops era and we were dogs. Like no one could ever take that away from us. And I really do believe, because you bring up Ethan. Well, the answer to the question is Ethan's the only guy who left for the draft. If RMT comes out, right? RMT's probably the first guy drafted out of Oklahoma, even before Danny, assuming
100%.
assuming he tests well. If RMT tests, if RMT tests well, he's probably a third round pick. I don't know. I don't know. Right? I don't want to speculate, but my point is, some of the pups that BV has recruited are better players than the players who started out with Link, and I don't know if there's any. I think Woody was a guy who Mike Stoops recruited way back when, right, prior to the COVID, kind of the COVID year where guys got more years to play. And so, I look at that piece and I just say, hey, BV, you got to start lining the sand right now and say, here moving forward, I think it's important for OU to be a team who gets a lot more guys recruited. I'll say this, and then we'll speak to Ethan. The fact of the matter is, you win more games, more of your guys get recruited. Go back and look at how many guys on the Georgia defense got recruited. I mean, got drafted. I think it's like 10. I think I think every Georgia defensive lineman and every Georgia backer, whether it was a seventh rounder or a second rounder or the 49ers who picked, Michael Williams in the first round, like every the first two levels of that defense, I believe all of the seniors or draft eligible guys were drafted, and that's because of that culture. They built that culture. They're widely regarded as the best program in college football right now. They've surpassed Alabama. OU has the, I don't even want to say potential yet, but they have the opportunity, right, to say we're going to keep taking steps in the direction of becoming back as a dominant fixture the way OU's offense was 8 years ago with Baker Mayfield and then Kyler Murray, and then you've got CD and you've got Westbrook and you have Mixon, you've had P Ryan, and we had the linemen. Like, right, there was a 6, 7, 8 year run where anybody who was a starter on OU's offense was going to get the benefit of the doubt, probably the draft bump, because culturally our offense was known, number one, for record breaking in college, known number two for quarterbacks who were going to be dudes, and then known number three, right? The guys who were coming into the league were having success in the league, which meant there was kind of some precedent and some pedigree that says, hey, OU dudes on offense, right? Those guys are NFL ready. I think we just, I hope our players understand that aspect of the game. And honestly, I hope our coaches understand that aspect. Here's why: because you don't think Georgia's using that. Hey, dude, you don't have to be the number one dude on Georgia's defense to be a second, third, fourth, fifth rounder, right? If you just are a rotational starter, you're going to have an opportunity to play on Sundays here. How many rotational starters got drafted at OU? Basically, our best two figurehead players on the defensive side of the ball are the only two that got drafted. So I think that's essential. Ethan Downs is a guy who's a program guy at OU. I'll use myself as an example. If I play 4 years, I'm probably an Ethan Downs. Do I bet on Mackey to be a guy who's going to play on Sundays? Fucking right. Excuse my French, because I was tough. I catch the ball, and who knows, right? My last 2 years, what I do if I don't get concussions, because the game really did slow down. I think Ethan showed us even that this year he hit another level of just consistency
Oh
and
yeah.
physicality, right? Like Ethan, he didn't have a stellar year, but he was better this year even than last year. I know he had a really good Texas game last year, but like just his consistency this year was one such that says he felt a level of comfort. Um, he's a 50-50 guy, man. You nor I nor anyone else knows what's going on in his head right now. It wouldn't surprise me if he played 5 years in the league. It wouldn't surprise me if he didn't make it through final cuts this first year and we saw him playing in the UFL. His ceiling and his floor, is essentially those levels, simply because there's a certain level of athleticism that is required in the NFL. Or I'll say this and pat myself on the back in a couple years if it happens. He might be a guy who, remember what we said for him to do 2 years ago? Put on
Gain some
12
weight,
pounds,
move
put on 12
inside.
pounds and play the three. If that's
Yeah.
something he's willing to do to elongate his career, that might be something that he could consider. And I'm just throwing it out there, right? I just say with his body, he looks like he can take another 15, 18 pounds and be a +3 technique who could potentially, raise some havoc.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing that on the defensive line I noticed. If you weren't a twitchy player, you didn't go in the first four, and you had a hard time even making it, through the draft. Like if you weren't a guy with a relatively explosive first step, and a guy who can hit the gas very quickly, can change direction, has a bag of moves. I think on the defensive line, this was a class that was very balanced from top to bottom in talent, which in other seasons, maybe Ethan is like a sixth or seventh rounder, but there were so many guys. I mean, there was a player who played for Central Arkansas who was 6'1", like 285, but just super strong, absolute stud, and dominated the lower level. And I think he went in the fourth or fifth round. So it just goes to show that the balance and the portal kind of changing the game a little bit, and maybe what Ethan could have done had he moved inside. And just out of respect, want to make sure we give all the guys their due. Touched on him briefly, DMAC, but Michael Tarkin goes to the Panthers again, the lone offensive player to sign with a team. You have Dejoun Terry go to the Rams, which
It's gonna
good
be
good
good for
on
him. It's
going
gonna
to
be
be
good
good
for him.
for him. Agreed. And you end up having Ethan to the Jags, and then Trace Ford, who, he had some big time highlight moments at Oklahoma. As OU developed an RMT, occasionally you would see guys like PJ get a few more snaps in games depending on the personnel. Ford was a guy who saw just a little bit less action or less opportunity, but still played quite a bit. But he's a guy who the player he was at Oklahoma State. I know he's dealt with a few injuries and
Yeah.
whatnot, but he's a guy who could potentially get super healthy and be another long mainstay NFL, level guy and really have more than a cup of coffee. I do think he's a player. If you wanted to say right now, out of all the undrafted free agents, who has the highest odds to still be on the final roster come start of season, if he doesn't have any injuries, I would put him right below Terry. I think Terry has the best odds of just you can't teach that size, you can't teach that first step. He has great length. He's a guy who, you can play him at 0, you can play him at 3. He can offer you some flexibility, and teams just like to have that now, right? And LA notoriously is a team that wants to pressure the quarterback, and he's pretty good at also getting upfield. He's good with the stunting, and at the end of the day, I think he's a guy who just has the body and the measurables, most of all, to contend. But want to touch on some negative news, and for Sooner fans, I've seen a little bit of the both sides of the coin. Some guys are wishing him well, saying kind of good riddance, and other Sooner fans are upset. What's going on in the room? And Gavin Sawchuk has
Mm,
entered his name into the transfer portal. Now, it does not mean, as we've seen with David Stone and other players in the past, that this is a guarantee that Sawchuk is out the door. But I do want to highlight a few things that we brought up during spring that we noticed. I watched a lot of practice footage, and he just did not look as well conditioned this year. He did not look like a guy who, if they had to play a game tomorrow, not that any of them could, but he's a guy, if they had to play a game tomorrow, he probably wouldn't see a snap. He is a player who has had major ups and downs at Oklahoma when the offensive line had stuff blocked up perfect, when he was healthy, when he was going against teams that were not, save for the Florida State game that was loaded with some serious talent, when they were going up against teams that were loaded with big time players. Sawchuk, he struggled, man. He struggled to get yardage. He struggled to create separation. If it wasn't absolutely perfect, and in the same vein, kind of with Barnes, as we've beat this dead horse until it's just absolutely out of its misery, Sawchuk is a player who, for me, this was not unexpected. You bring in Jay Knott, ex-Rob, makes a name for himself this towards the end of last year, and we know that Murray does have an affinity for Barnes. And I think just that affinity for Barnes and Barnes having that trust that Murray is going to give him an opportunity is probably what keeps Murray at Oklahoma. And he is a guy who I think consistently he didn't have the top shelf highlight plays like Sawchuk did, but still saw some action, just never could separate against the better teams. But where do you put the temperature of the running back room right now with Sawchuk's departure, or let's say potential departure? And for you, how do you rate this on the meter of should we be worried versus is this a nothing burger?
um, dude, there's a lot to unpack here. If you tell me you want the short or you want the long, which one do you want, bro?
Let's uh let's do long. I think we got
You
time.
want
We've
the
been on here
long?
34 minutes.
Okay.
Let's go. Let's get the fans what they
So
want.
okay, so let's first talk about production. Um, I think it's pretty obvious he lost some of his explosiveness, And just he as a freshman versus he as a junior, right? We saw some of that ability to just be explosive, a la the Florida State game, or bowl game. And so there's that. I think his biggest issue was twofold: injuries, and not even just like injured, but even hurt. I'm hurt, and so I'm 70%, I'm 60%, maybe good enough to play, but I'm not going to be my best version of myself. And then the other thing is when you bring in an odd, I think it's duplication or redundancy of player. And so for me, I look at that piece and say, he might be a lesser version of who they brought in, right? The style of back that odd is a more optimal version of what Sawchuk could be or maybe previously was. But let's park that. I'm probably gonna say something that's gonna ruffle feathers. Again, you guys know me. I don't care. And this is a rumor, so I'm not gonna say this as fact. If I know facts, I'll call it facts. If it's rumors, I'll say it's rumors. But rumor has it that Chuck didn't want to leave, but in the nature of the way college football is run now, where there is a GM and an essential salary cap and an essential, tangible dollar amount that is allocated to both the team and then position groups, what seems to me what may have happened is when Ott comes in and takes a lion's share of what the pot is at the running back position, now Sawchuk is in a position where he is at a lesser position, which means he has a lesser allotment. And, again, rumor has it that there was an agreement in place on what Sawchuk was owed or what garnered, what he earned, I guess is a better term. And late in this portal period, now being told, yo, bro, we want you to reevaluate again. And so, it's kind of heart versus mind, right? My heart is like, damn, it sounds to me like the kid wanted to stay, but in an economic landscape that is college football now, I mean, just hypothetically speaking, if he was a 300K guy going into last season and they say, hey, dude, based on production, you're now a 200 or 100K guy or 150K guy, right? At going into this season, bringing Ott, and then so he says, okay, I'm a 150K guy now, right? And there's an agreement in place. And then you come back at the very end after spring ball and say, no, bro, we want you to be an 80K guy. We want to reduce you another, essentially 50% of your value. I think at that point, the way the game is played now, it is in a player's interest to go see what his open market value is. And so I think just based upon rumors that I'm hearing, that's more in line with what's in play, which means number one, I don't fault him. Number two, I think that's a pretty savvy way to conduct business in OU's regard, except one piece. If they had an agreement after the season and he said, hey, I accept XYZ in terms of my value to the team, it is kind of bush league to come in at the very end of the spring portal and say, we kind of want you to take another discount. You know what I'm saying? If that rumor is true, then that ends so, in not so many words, it's kind of disappointing. But again, heart versus mind, right? My mind says, I get it. This is business. Like, yo, we had the opportunity to get a better player. We want to keep our books balanced. You know what I'm saying? The fact of the matter is you are oft injured. You are oft hurt. You haven't been extremely productive. I'm going to leave Barnes out of this conversation because if you include Barnes in this conversation, to me, Barnes needs to go before Sawchuk. That's my opinion. Barnes has gotten a much better opportunity than Chuck has. And I have heard firsthand that there were times where Chuck was healthy and Murray just wanted to feature Barnes for whatever reason, and Barnes was not productive in games that he was featured. And then, of course, the bowl game, Chuck has a phenomenal first quarter, and then they never really go back to him. They've got like this kind of weird rotation where like everybody gets a turn just because it's their turn, like we're in elementary playing Foursquare or something, right? You got to go with the hot hand, especially in a game we're trying to win. So, I don't make excuses for people, but I just look at it holistically, and I say I don't think we gave Chuck a full, comprehensive, fair chance to be successful. A little different than your take. I believe there were times where he didn't get a fair shake. I remember I went to the I went to the Houston game. I believe it was Houston. I think he got like 3 carries, and all 3 carries he got tackled behind the line of scrimmage within 1 second of getting the ball. Essentially, somebody had to run through or block, beat on their assignment or whatever. They read the play and were able to get there, and then like he never got another chance. Right. And Barnes was featured on some outside zone stuff where you got a chance to visually see if you got a cutback lane, da 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 da. And I'm just spectating, just kind of observing what I see. But I also I just sense to myself like Chuck's a one cut guy. Find the
Mhm.
lane, hit the seam, and at the second, third level, see if you can, angle it or beat a safety. Um, Ott is too. And I think there isn't anyone who would say that Ott hasn't shown more productivity. I mean, Ott's had 1,000 yard season. I think Chuck had a total 1,000 yards in his entire career, or a little less than 1,000, is what I believe the stat that I saw is. So I just look at the scenario, and here's what I have to do. Right, I have to trust DeMarco and BV and the assessment that they made. Do I personally agree? I don't. I'm not a Barnes fan. I was a huge Barnes fan about his first year and a half. I think he's shown enough film to say he's not going to be a priority in our offense. That's my position. That's my opinion. I think the film backs it up. He's played in a bunch of games where he's been featured and got enough carries. We've seen what he can do when he's had some success. Right, he's had some success. I'm not going to say the guy's a bum, but at OU, I think it's pretty clear that if Barnes is your lead dog, then you're pretty mediocre at that position. And I think at the Sawchuk piece, between injuries, hurt, and who knows if there was some kind of personality or emotional, pissed off, sad, whatever, down on himself, kind of a scenario. At the end of the day, man, we playing big time ball now. These guys are getting 6-figure checks every year. So I'm not going to sit here and cry, make excuses, and whine because damn it, I played at OU and look, what I'm saying. They was giving us coupons for free food at Burger King in Walker Tower,
There you
Adams
go.
Tower, or whatever, right?
Killer.
So, um, kid, kids know. I don't think he's coming back. I saw
I
someone
don't
said his
either.
brother's still in team. I think there's going to be somebody, Arizona State, somebody in the West Coast, right? There's going to be some teams who are saying, hey, that's a good opportunity for us. I think, you brought this up, but like what it might look like to have a different training staff and or somebody who could really focus on his hamstrings, his legs, and see if he can get that, overcome that, and regain his explosiveness that we saw on his highlight tape in his freshman year. I think it might be healthy for him and the program to go separate ways. um, I throw this last caveat out. Barnes, you're in a new scheme. Hopefully, Arbuckle can unlock some of the, because Barnes's high school tape is legit. Hopefully, we can unlock some of the talent that we saw with him as a pup. But I think going into the fall camp deal, he's probably legitimately the third back between Ott and then X Rob, and then I think he, Tatum, and Blaylock are kind of fighting for third ring.
Man, I'm gonna go out on. I don't even think it's that big of a limb, and say that Barnes is probably gonna be the third man in the rung, and is not going to, regardless of the offense and what it looks like. He does not have the things, the tools, right? We talked about it on the defensive side of the ball with the draft. There's a certain level of player that when you watch a Jaden Ott play on a team where, are you to tell me that Cal has that much more talent than Oklahoma?
They got four
Right?
guys drafted.
They did get 4 guys
They got
drafted,
4 guys drafted.
but at the end of the day, you're not playing you're not playing SEC competition, but there are things that you are doing as a player that you look at the film of a guy like Barnes and he's just not doing. So for me, I'm maybe a little, I don't want to say lower on the Sawchuk situation, but I think his hamstrings and injuries had so much to do with him not playing. When you are a one cut back, when you stop and you plant and you put that foot in the ground, the forces that you're putting on your hamstrings are just insane. And I think he was a guy who never could get ahead of the game and get to a place where he was just healthy and felt good, that there may not have been a great plan for him. As a guy who works closely and knows a lot about this situation, who works closely with guys and dealing with hamstring issues, dealing with calf issues, guys who run the 60 and run the 100 and they're like, man, my quad is doing this, where we try to see what we can fix to deliver a result that addresses those things. And OU, man, the training staff, for as much as they've been maligned, they do pay attention. They do run, gamuts of tests. They make sure guys are field game ready. And I just think that Sawchuk never got, kind of over that line. For me, he never really looked super well conditioned. And I know maybe that's like a hot take, but even Barnes would go out regularly and look more conditioned than Sawchuk would. And can you played with Coach Stoops and with Coach Jerry Schmidt. The conditioning is the name of the game if you're trying to win in the fourth quarter, man. And if you're not the most well conditioned back there, unless you're Adrian Peterson, you're going to have a tough time playing. And even Adrian was the most well conditioned guy
Yeah,
in the room.
yeah. That the AD and in or unconditioned, whatever the hell, whichever was
Yeah.
his proper English, didn't go in the same breath. AD could run all freaking day.
Exactly. So if you're not well conditioned and you're gassing out, or your lack of conditioning is making you hold an extra 7 to 10 pounds that you don't need to be holding on to, that is affecting your ability for that hammy to get healthy. And I say this, guys, from experience. I've seen this. I've seen players, I've seen athletes who have hammy issues who are sitting at like 14, 13% body fat when they should be going after summer being at like 9 and 10, right?
Sounds like me.
And it can make a big, massive difference. I mean, DMAC, tell me, when you were an athlete at Oklahoma, how much faster and explosive did you feel when you were, shredded abs? You got the striations showing in the shoulders. Like, you felt like a better player and a more bouncy, explosive guy in those moments.
Yeah, I hovered around 5 to 6% body fat, 5.5. Um, I didn't get to like the 3 and 4 like Willie P and some of those guys, Ante. But always, I didn't carry much fat in college. I'm trying to get these little shoulders back. You know what I'm
There
saying?
you go. There you
We
go.
trying to get back in the room. But yeah, yeah, I don't know. That's probably I would definitely err on the side of what you say in terms of conditioning. I'm gonna text a couple people and ask, like, hey, how was he? Was he a guy who was always on his knees? Because I could run all day. Like, they couldn't get us to stop running. I mean, we had to. It was an expectation. Spurrier would flat out say, "You can't play for me if you can't run," and so we all expected to go out there and put our best foot forward in terms of running with the ball. But anyway, Sawchuk, bro, wish you the best. I don't think he's coming back. That's just my own personal
Yeah.
opinion. I just think the running back room's loaded, and I think they're trying to turn the page on some of the stuff that was in the old regime and move forward, man. No ill will for me. If what I heard is true and they came back to him and said, hey, dude, we want to cut your NIL in half again, I think he did what was in his best interest. I think OU also did what was in their best interest. The portal works both ways. Players are portaling on their own terms, so I have no issue with OU handling the portal in a way where it's going to be in their best interest. I think the colleges need to take more control over how the portal is going to impact them. And I think Nagy is a guy who's showing that he's a shrewd businessman where, like, I think the players are starting to get a feel that, like, yo, I better be on my stuff, because if not, Nagy may have a list of 3 to 5 guys at every position who he's like, I dare you to leave if you want to, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's just kind of the the inkling that I get. No one's necessarily. I heard, I've had one person tell me that there's been some position coaches pretty pissed that he's like, yo, we ain't recruiting that kid, or that kid's not a priority anymore. Kind of essentially throwing his weight out there in that regard. But again, I don't know that that's not healthy. I think it is healthy to have someone who says it's my job to look at the literal macro lens of the program, right? Everything, all the things, comprehensive, and the attributes, the traits. I'll never forget. Saban said, "Hey, dude, there were just certain guys, regardless of how good they were, we didn't recruit them. They weren't Bama guys." He was like, "We didn't recruit 5'9" receivers or DBs at Bama. We didn't recruit." 5'10, 5'11, 210-pound backers at Bama. He was like, nope, there was a criteria that if you didn't fit this criteria, you weren't a Bama player. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if Nagy has some type of parameter framework that says, moving forward, OU receivers need to run this, need to have this height, need to have this, kind of catch radius, kind of a situation, and then we can pinpoint the guys who are going to fit that criteria.
And
Somebody,
this,
somebody
go
asked
ahead.
me, we got to win. Listen, I'm a 9-3 guy. 4 losses is BS. So I don't care what conference we're in. I don't care. I don't care. If people are asking in the comments, like, where should we be win loss record? Um, to me, like, I don't pick L's. There's that. And I hope our regime doesn't, like, yeah, we're okay. If I would be pissed, I wish our captains would be like 10-2. I'd be looking at them like,
Mm,
and who we losing to, bro? Like what? Like nah.
yeah.
Like that would literally be an issue for me. We would beef. We would beef. Somebody laughed. Like that would be a beef for real.
Yeah.
Like I told you the story. Freshman year after we went 5-7, Trent and I are looking at each other like, bro, if we don't go undefeated, what the hell are we doing? OU hadn't gone undefeated in I don't know how many years. We're literally looking at each other after a Schmitty offseason, like, bro, we got to go undefeated. And that was just like the mantra in freaking February, but prior to the season, we go undefeated. We're like, damn it, we got to go undefeated. So, from the player standpoint, I hope they're not picking L's. From an outsider looking in, 9-3, dude. I don't want to 4 games. Can you imagine our post game pods if we have 4 losses, not including the bowl
Oof.
game? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's gonna be fire and brimstone coming from me for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this based on all of the things that I've heard about Mateer, that is absolutely not the mindset. Mateer is a very, very, very
Yeah, yeah,
competitive player, and you go only as far as your quarterback is going to go. And if you got a quarterback who's shaking in his boots and feels like a 6-7 guy, then that gummit is probably going to be your record because
Jackson,
like Jackson, right?
scared,
And
conceding. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
yeah,
I'm
no,
just going to
man, you're
fun.
right.
Like, bro, they were like, he wanted to concede some practices. Could you imagine being a receiver and the quarterback's like, we might have a bad scrimmage? What? Josh
Yeah.
Heupel would never. J Dub wouldn't. Do you know how much shit we used to talk, Roy Lee? We coming for y'all. Y'all better bring y'all A game, bro. I'm gonna
Yeah.
hit you. I'm gonna cheap shot you. Like it was borderline. Like we used to beef. Oh, they said he used to concede practices. Have fun in Auburn, bro. Ugh, that
Yeah, because
just
that,
hurts
that
my
that's
soul.
not a mindset that at Oklahoma is going to work. And you saw it with Murray was a hyper competitive player. We know what Jalen Hurts was, and also even a guy like Spencer Rattler, man, he had his issues, but Rattler didn't go in there conceding.
Pussyfooting.
Yeah, he just had, that like fatal flaws in his game that impacted him and just didn't, spend the time he needed to. But, kudos to him for maturing, hanging out in the league and doing something. But I want to touch on two things before we get out of here.
Let's do it.
One, Shadeur Sanders, and I guess it's kind of one in the same. Shadeur Sanders goes in the fifth round. He was a top 20 talent. Me and you were high on him all season last year and the year before. He's a guy who he can make the layered throw. He has good velocity on the ball. His mobility, I think he is the most mobile quarterback in the pocket. Not talking running in the open field, not talking about going and getting you 30 yards. I'm talking about moving in the pocket with as bad as that Colorado offensive line was at times. He's a guy who made things happen that shouldn't have even been there. And I think that there was a lot of factors for him dropping. We all heard that he didn't interview well. We know that he's a part of the Sanders family, and with that comes a whole lot of weight. And he's a good quarterback. So let me kind of, I'm not walking anything back, but he's also not Caleb Williams, and there wasn't a Caleb Williams in this class. There wasn't a Trevor Lawrence in this class. And even kudos to Cam Ward. Did you see the photo of who Cam Ward was with after the pick? Did you see he was with Arbuckle and the John Kaczynski, I think is how you say his name. So OU's quarterback coach and Ben Arbuckle were there for Cam Ward. So just, kudos to the Sooner OC putting a number one guy out there, a number one pick out there. But I want to talk about Shadeur dropping, but I just want to get your thoughts on the trolling job that Ole Miss, I guess it was an Ole Miss student, did to
Frat
him.
boys, frat boys.
Man, those numbers are super private, right? We know that. Those are numbers that the NFL teams have, your agent has, and maybe like one or two people even in your family, and probably not even that. It is a very private phone number for that reason. Specifically, you're doing big business on it. And they're able to get a hold of this number. They call up Shador. They tell him he's being picked, but he's going to have to wait longer. They don't know what's going on. And to me, I had a pretty strong opinion on it. It just is just just an unkind, just awful thing to do. It was, you would feel awful like if he was going for a big promotion 10 years down the road and somebody called him up, hey man, just want to let you know you got that $100,000 raise, big promotion, yada yada yada. Oh, by the way, just kidding. Not going to be a thing for you. So want to get your thoughts on him falling. What do you think led to that? What's going on? And then also the frat boy prank call piece, man, which was just awful.
Shout out to the frat boys. Anytime, listen, when you in college, YOLO, baby. You only live once. So they got access to Shadeur's number. I ain't mad at it. I mean, whatever, right? Tact and taste. But there's some things I did in college. Listen, one year, and this ain't the time to be telling stories, but there was one fraternity that had a problem with the Bud. Our freshman year at the Bud, Barry, we definitely called all the dogs and went to their little. They had a formal where they was all dressed up with the girls and the whole thing, and they were at their frat house. We brought firecrackers. We brought the fire extinguisher. We brought balloons. Oh, we definitely lit the firecrackers. People running out the room, and we let their asses have it. Boo, 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 boo. I mean, it's probably 40 of us. Oh, true
What?
story. True story. True
That's
mother sucking
ridiculous.
story. So I'm not proud of everything I did in college. You know what I'm saying? And so the frat kids did what they did. What I'm saying? As a grown man, I'm like, oh man, it was his turn, and they kind of, what I'm saying, took a crap on his moment. But I that has nothing to do with what Shadeur was dealing with. Here's the way I
Mm.
look at it. People try to throw race into it and try to demean his skill sets. Guys, he's a first round talent. Like, get out of here. Like, I don't want to talk to nobody about what his talent was. Oh, he was mediocre. The numbers didn't suggest that. Oh, he took too many sacks. Yeah, he took a 1-11 team and took them to a 9-4 team and almost to the college playoffs. Oh, he can't throw the ball well. I'm gonna give a hot take, and some people are gonna hate on it. Switch Burrow from that LSU team and Shador to the Colorado team, and I believe both of them have very similar outcomes. I believe Shador takes that LSU team with Chase and Jefferson and the running back and those guys and wins a natty. Just his talent, right? Shadeur's talent is anticipation, accuracy, and making the correct read. That's what he does extremely well. That's why he was number 4 in the Heisman consideration, right? Like, there were the 3 guys, and then he didn't get invited or whatever. But like, let's not kid ourselves. And by the way, he did it consistently. He did that at the HBCU. I mean, he took the worst P4 program in America. Like, they were the worst one and made, not only did they matter, they were a game away from winning the Big 12. If they could have beat Kansas, which by the way, Neil killed their asses on defense that game, the running back from Kansas, like he's a guy who has potential to be a starter in the NFL. And anyone who says otherwise is literally hating, like you're hating. His numbers suggest that the games that he willed his team to victory. Some of the throws he was able to make happen. I don't know if he throws the hardest fastball in America, right? I don't know. But here's my take. The NBA was once a league that was run by the programs, the franchises. A guy by the name of Michael Jeffrey Jordan came and had an issue with his GM, and that ballooned into collective bargaining, changing to a point where over time the players have essentially taken over the league. The players run the league now, right? I think I forgot the guy's name, but the HBC of the Denver Nuggets was like the second longest tenured head ball
Oh yeah,
coach
Mike
and
Malone. Yeah.
yeah, and but he got fired, right? And he just won an NBA Finals 2 years ago, and there was a lot of questioning around Joker's take, and essentially Joker kind of stayed neutral. He was like, I don't have an opinion one way or the other, which gave them permission. Whereas if Joker had said, nah, he needs to stay, he would have stayed. And
100%.
so you're talking about a league where the star power players run the league. I'm not going to make this about race. I'm not going to make this about even necessarily Dion explicitly. But here's one thing I know: the Shield runs the NFL, period. Period. The NFL is still a league that is controlled by the Shield. Barry, do you know what the Shield is?
Yeah, give me your take, because
The
I would
Shield,
just the NFL brass.
it's very simple. The Shield is 32 owners and the commissioner.
Yeah.
That's what the Shield is. And there is nothing above the Shield in the NFL. Tom Brady is not above the Shield in the NFL, but Bill Belichick is not above the Shield in the NFL. So that's why I'm like, to me, this isn't like, oh, they're hating on the black dude. And I listen, I am a so my master's is urban educational leadership, which means I did my master's work through the lens of urban school districts. I believe that is an institutionally racist system, socially economically racist, or socioeconomically deprived the most. But it's absolutely racist. And whoever wants to argue me, let's do it. I'm in. Let's have it. The NFL is it's economics. It's money.
Mm,
And it is the narrative, right? For the NFL, it's the most important thing to the NFL is that they control the narrative. And the NFL still does control the narrative. In fact, proven this weekend when the NFL controlled the narrative that said, Shadeur, you will get drafted when we say you get drafted. Not because you're black, not because of Dion's son, not because of all these other things. It's because of control. The only thing more important in capitalism than money. You know the only thing more important in the capitalistic system than money? You know what it is?
well, what is it?
Power.
Mm,
Power. So I look at this whole scenario with Shadeur. Here's what I will say. Um I appreciate so the narratives that he needed to be humbled, he was arrogant, this and that and everything else, right? Which I never saw that. I didn't. I didn't like I heard again, like, don't make me get into the whole like, oh, he interviewed bad. So did Vince Young. And Vince Young can only throw 3 routes. I get it.
yeah.
He's an all caliber talent, but the quarterback, the most important skill set a quarterback needs is accuracy. And Shadeur has that in spades. Period. So all of that other hogwash is people hating, misinformed, uneducated, blah 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 blah. Shadeur was going to buck the system. Shadeur was going to provide power for the individual. Again, this is just my opinion. If Baker Mayfield, a white dude, you know what I'm saying, who was a Heisman winner, had Baker had his issues. I'm a big Baker fan. He's a Sooner, right? But like Baker wasn't like I'm gonna run shit and I'm gonna do things on my own terms, which
Mm,
is not bad
yeah.
because now guys get paid millions in college. Clearly, Shadeur has a dad who understands the negotiation, the collective bargaining, right? So all of that stuff, he's like, I don't need an agent per se. All I'm saying is this: the angle in which Shadeur was coming into the league is one, right or wrong, because I don't mind it at all. I like it. But the angle in which he was coming into the league is one where the league was saying, "Yo, bro, I don't know." And if I believe if Baker, white dude from Texas, it was doing the same thing, I think they'd prove a point to Bake too. So I just say that because I think people are too binary in their thinking. Just this whole Trump, conservative, liberal, Dems, Republicans. By the way, I'm neither. Both of them can kiss my $8 $. I'm not going to get too too political on this pod. I am an entrepreneur. I have built a very successful business. I am very keen to what's happening from an economic standpoint. I am a black man who comes from the Bay Area, whose uncle was a Black Panther. So take it for what you want. I also am an individual who am in control of my life, and I'm not going to let somebody else, you know what I'm saying, paint my narrative for me. So I'm not a victim. Period. I just never believed in allowing myself to be a victim. Yes, do I believe there are racist and institutional practices that are unfairly wagered against me? There are. Walk a day in my shoes. There are. Guess what? I don't give a damn. I have learned to navigate them, and I know how to, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna move where
Yeah.
I can and can't. And so I say all that long-winded stuff to say, did you see how he acted after he got drafted?
Mm.
He
He was humble.
Man, are you kidding me? They were jumping for joy. They were shouting. He was quoting scripture. He was fully
Yeah.
dressed. He jumped in the pool. His brother went undrafted. They were dancing when he got picked up by Tampa Bay. Now I will say that. I will say, don't believe the hype. They're letting y'all know that all the prejudice around his arrogance, they're proving for social media and the cameras that they can be humble. That's part of what they're
For
doing.
sure.
At least that's
100%.
my opinion.
It's a little PR. A little bit.
100%. But at
A
the
little bit.
same time, I think the kid just wants to play ball. Like the
Yeah.
kid's a ball player. Straight
And,
up. Straight up.
and I'll say this. I know Sooner fans aren't going to agree with me, but guys, a guy who went to Tampa and has just balled out since being there, making plays, a true playmaker, could not thrive in the Stefanski system. Shador is going to end up starting ahead of Dylan Gabriel. It's just going to be it. They may give Gabriel the nod early in the year. Gabriel, in some cases may, but Shador is going to be finishing the season. I'm just Shador and DG are they're not even in the same ballpark when it comes to where they can deliver the ball, the escapability in the pocket. If Shador was on OU's team in 23, where OU went 6-7, OU wins at least 3 more games because he was that talented of a player. He's that accurate. He's that mobile. If I don't think anybody would disagree that Baker is far and away a better playmaker than Gabriel. Like, who is there somebody who would disagree with that take? And way more mobile, way better athlete, right? Built better. And if Baker could not get it done in Stefanski's system, then Gabriel is also not going to get it done in that system. It is a system where, one, it helps to be a little bit bigger body, a longer guy. That's why you go and get a Watson. It's why Winston was a nice, secondary option in that take. And it's why a guy like Shadeur, who can play within the confines of an offense, but when you need him to, can go off script and make a play. The It is absolutely just. I think it is a pipe dream to believe that Dylan Gabriel is going to just solidly beat him out for that spot.
I gotta interrupt you.
Go for it.
If we don't leave this damn Dylan Gabriel was a message. Dylan Gabriel will, I wouldn't say never, but he will never be a starter in the NFL. Like, let's stop. Like
Yeah.
right now. Salute to him getting paid, continuing his dream. He's 5'11. He's a guy you need him for 2 or 3 games because your starter's hurt. I think that's I think that's a fair way to say he could potentially be a guy who can keep it together. His grade was a 65. Shadeur's grade was an 84. Like they're not in the same hemisphere. Like to have the conversation of DG versus Shadeur, again, Shadeur is in the situation he's in because he represents a change of guard in the system. I feel really confident around that. I just seeing how many guys I know that have played in the league you guys, Shadeur's he does not have a bad arm for the league. Brock Purdy does, but Brock Purdy's in a phenomenal situation, and Brock Purdy's attributes are accuracy and anticipation. And
Yeah,
Shadeur is just as good in those areas: taller, stronger, better arm, more pedigree in terms of college prowess in the sense. Well, Brock was, by the way, he was an issue for us too, man. Brock, I think Brock got 2 dubs against us. In fact, one in Norman. In fact,
Brock was legit.
Brock beat us in Norman and Brock beat us in Iowa. So I won't say more pedigree. But DG, listen, salute to the kid. He's he's a guy who went to the right situation and is gonna be a good backup. If the 49ers had DG as a backup and he only had to play 2 games a season, awesome. Shadeur Sanders is a guy who, so long as he isn't railroaded, could be a starter in the league for someone's team. I
For
will
sure.
say the Browns is one of the most terrible programs or franchises in all of sports, let alone just the NFL. So he went to a place where if he does well in Cleveland, a la Baker. Baker did well in Cleveland one year, but if Shador can do well in Cleveland, I think he's proven that he can do well anywhere. I look forward to him putting his best foot forward, proving the naysayers wrong, because if he doesn't, everyone will say, "I told you so."
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I've seen a couple of the comments, about DG, and it just when you get to that level, it is far less about like who you played in college. It is can you make the throws? Can you be accurate? Can you see the field? Right? You got guys playing now. Mahomes wasn't beating big time teams at Texas Tech, right? But you saw the talent. He was on teams that were hovering around 500 at times, and that
Eight
they
and
weren't.
four, 8 and 4.
Yeah,
They
eight and
weren't
four. We'll say
500.
8 and 4.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
But they had. Well, I believe that they in one of the seasons he played. I want to say they were 2 games under 500, almost midway into the year.
Yeah,
So,
they had a
so
bunch
he
of injuries. Yep.
so he's been on teams. The NFL doesn't care about that. Like they look at it in terms of were you a guy who uplifted those around you? Could you make guys who maybe were lesser better? Right, which is why I think Baker getting a player like Emeka Egbuka down in Tampa is just that's perfect recipe. Now you got Evans and Egbuka because Goodwin, he can't stay healthy.
Got onto his
Yeah,
ACL again, or had
it,
an Achilles, one of the two.
so it's just to me, Baker's going to keep flourishing down there, man.
Before you
So
transition, let's get in these
go ahead.
comments. If y'all disrespect Baker one more time, like stop disrespecting Baker. Somebody said he's mid. Are you freaking kidding me? Baker's mid? Somebody else said Dylan Gabriel's had a better, like, bro, Dylan played for Oregon and he threw screens, quick game, and pump and go. And they had a running game that was very strong, so they had a good action game because teams were stepping up trying to stop the run. Shador did it without a running game. Imagine going up against defense who's saying the best thing you guys have are 2 receivers on the outside, Hunter and Horn, and your quarterback putting the ball there. Like that's literally what Shadeur had to do for 2 years versus DG, who had NFL caliber talent all over the field, a really strong defense, and a
Yeah,
really strong offensive line. So apples and doorknobs, haven't used that one in a long time.
been a minute. Been a
Apples and
minute.
doorknobs. But back to Baker. Don't you who who the hell is on our pod disrespecting Bake? Like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
Like, you guys are wilding
And there was legit NFL guys this past year saying Baker might have been one of the top 5 in the league.
for sure.
Like he had probably had the best play of the year from a quarterback in that play where he's stiff arming old dude and then delivers the pass down the hash. Like that's stuff that like has not been seen before. Like Baker and Gabriel, if what are we doing, guys? Like
Transition. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Let's get out there.
man, that's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
crazy.
We
So,
wilding.
anyways, I think we're going to continue to hear more stuff going on behind the scenes with Oklahoma as the portal window as we know it is closing. Right, I think it is. I think it's actually already closed. Some of the days I've been a little bit in a blur here, but
What's today's date?
today is the 26th,
I think it's midnight tonight.
midnight tonight. Okay, so there you go. Um, Probably going to hear some hubbubaloo as the summer rolls around, season fall camp starts. But the OU, I think for guys who are going to be distancing themselves or being issues with the program, I think we've seen a lot of the attrition already take place. You might see a few things here or there, but for the most part, I think this is going to be the team that Oklahoma rolls with, man. That's also why you have the portal window, so you at least get some time with the squad that you have and don't have this thing just running around, all year. You got to have a window in which these transactions can be executed. And as summer rolls in, folks, me and DMAC, we're going to be talking about what OU is doing from a training off-season perspective. We did do a series a year ago, but we'll definitely dip our toe into what's going on because OU will be putting out different bits of content. Going to be keeping up this summer. Since you got OKC, LA is still in the playoffs. We're going to have maybe a little bit more NBA playoff talk than we have had historically, but
You
it's going
just
to
doing
be,
that because y'all decent. Y'all better
yeah,
not. Y'all better win. If y'all don't win, I'm coming for all Oklahoma fans or Oklahoma Thunder. Jay Hunt's a huge fan. This guy's always talking about. Let me see if I can. Wait, there it is. This guy is always talking about the damn Thunder.
yeah.
Y'all better figure it out. Because if not, I I'm on y'all.
Yeah, yeah, man. OKC sweeps Memphis, gets it done. I will say the East, seeing Detroit play basketball a little bit is kind of cool. Um, I am I'm a pretty big fan of Jalen Rose, guys. That Jalen Rose was killing it on NBA on TNT tonight. ESPN let him go.
Time out. He was on there tonight. Oh,
Yeah,
I love him as
fantastic.
they were wilding. They chose Molly over him. Molly's trash.
Yeah,
We need to keep
Jalen's
Jalen.
phenomenal. Jalen's phenomenal. The one of my favorite podcasts, and I would say maybe even like an inspiration for what it looks like with what we're doing, was the Grantland show,
Yeah,
right? That he did with Jaco. Not the one that was on
ESPN.
ESPN,
No, I know you're talking about.
but the
Yeah,
one before that. That was on basically Bill Simmons, little shtick that he did, the company he started. That podcast was so good, and Jalen just phenomenal. And I think if as they venture into this ESPN deal, NBA on TNT as they move over to ESPN last year on
yeah.
Turner, but Turner's still going to produce the show. Man, Jalen is high level. Man, he is the guy who I would have on there all the time. Softball also we'll touch on the way out. Softball kind of catching their stride a little
Smacked
bit.
up on Texas per
Yeah,
usual.
yeah, catching their stride. So it's good to see that. We didn't touch on some of the other sports, but gymnastics had a phenomenal showing. I know there's a lot of people here who just all love for Oklahoma and everything that they're doing, not just football. And you also with some big time recruits here in the basketball side. Not doing bad on that spot. But if you want the news and the insight and all of the stuff that goes along with that, go over to OU Insider, OUinsider.com. Get yourself a membership. As always, they are helping bring this show to you all. DMAC, before we get out of here, closing thoughts for this evening. Transfer portal shutting down for a little bit. What are your thoughts in Sooner Land right now?
Yeah, shout out to the girls getting it done in softball. That's a big series win by them. I think the boys got off to a good start in baseball. I know, right? We're a women's program. We said that during the bowl game. But I think the baseball team's doing well. I don't know if they won the series against Georgia, but I know they won the first game. The Witherspoon kid, the twin, I think he outperformed Georgia's one of Georgia's aces in baseball. We're warming up, man. It's definitely going to be a fun summer for us. If summer is anything like it was when I was playing at OU, Roy Lee's on here. By the way, Roy Lee's on here. Shout out, my bro. Um, we need to get you back on the show. In fact, what we need to do, Barry, we keep saying it, and you got to just kind of push me towards it. We got to do like a 4-week series where we get some of the guys on from some of the championship years or even just the post championship years
Yeah.
and let them tell some stories. I think I want to tell some stories again.
Yeah.
We haven't done an episode where we talked about some things. So maybe we'll ask some guys if there's any
And
stories
we
they
didn't
want to
have
hear.
him on with the video. Like the production's
Ah,
tight
yeah.
now.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it'll be. We have had him on, folks, and go back
Yeah.
and listen to those shows. But
Yeah.
did not. It wasn't the production value we have now.
Yeah, I am cautiously optimistic about the season. I think we need to put a bow on the portal seat or the portal, whatever you call this season or whatever. I think we addressed a lot of things that we've had issues with in the past, whether it be the kicker, where we got the kid we just brought on the other day. Obviously, the slew of receivers we brought on in the first session, but then even like the depth at linemen. We brought the center in. We brought some competitive depth in on the O line. Um, I think this will probably prove to be the first year where not only did we like have a solid portal season. I feel like in past years we like got a couple dudes or whatever, but I feel like this year there was a plan and I feel like there was cohesion um, in a sense of truly doing a self study on the program and saying where are some areas we really need to address to be competitive. And I hate that our backs had to be against the wall to do it, but I feel like this year, last year they talk about O-line injuries, but we kind of brought in boo-boo depth. Like the depth we brought in is like
Yeah.
North Texas and Handkerchief A&T School for the Blind and Deaf. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like this year we addressed some of the areas where we're like, okay, we've got a lot of offensive linemen, but who do we need to go ahead and give them an opportunity to leave? And who do we replace them with that is going to be like competent depth? Again, the receiver position, competent depth, right? We struggle kicking the ball all spring. Competent competition,
I like the kicker they brought
Yeah,
in, man.
for
He is
sure.
solid. I'm gonna be doing a breakdown on him on OU Insider, just some
No,
of the things he is. Reminds me a little bit. If he's not as long, but his style, the way he's kind of he relies very heavily on the follow through, and he's a super accurate kicker. Very kind of Gabe Burkich and like very whippy as opposed to like super powerful, right? Just it's very cool to watch. I nerd out on the kicking stuff a little bit. So
Roy
looking
Lee,
forward to
shut
that.
up. Roy, watch out, bro. You wilding right now. I'm gonna get your ass on the show and we're gonna clown for a little bit. But yeah, Portal went well. We're clearly spring portal's over. It'll be fun to see. I mean, here's what we gotta do, Barry. We gotta stay healthy. This
Yeah.
this summer and fall camp, we've got to have a productive and health. We can't afford to hear two or three more receivers, two or three. Let me knock on wood. Um, Again, looking forward to a good season. And then looking forward to us doing some fun things during the summer to keep the listeners engaged.
Let's go, man, guys. I'm trying to be a little more active on X. Love the feedback. Doing some more of the spaces here now. Hopping off with some of the fans. That's always kind of fun. People who listen to the show. Love talking to you guys. When some of you folks see me out at different places, it's cool. It's nice to meet the folks. If you guys are in the Tulsa area, come swing by the gym. And I never promote this, but I am now that this has become a big vein of what I do. But guys, I offer services to those who are disabled, special needs. We work with everybody from those who have autism to cerebral palsy to Fragile X syndrome, Down syndrome. What we do is create an environment that's, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty dope. We're lifting weights, we're having fun, we're getting people fit. We just had this kid, I don't want to say his name on here, man, but if you guys go, you guys can find out. Just follow me on social at BWise Fitness. He's lost 41 pounds since September. He looks phenomenal, just a different kid, and we know how much your fitness impacts your confidence, your ability to go out and do things, and your intelligence, your IQ, your ability to function better as a human being. And that's always been a passion for me. I never promote it on here because I've always kept that thing kind of separate. But with all of the stuff that is going on in Oklahoma and certain programs that are disappearing because of just some government shutdown of different things. I alluded to it a little bit last podcast, but I'm doing some stuff as far as the state goes, trying to change some legislation to just advocate better for those who have disabilities. So if anybody, I don't get to see a penny of it, but if you guys want to donate to some good organizations, Autism Oklahoma is fantastic. Go to autismoklahoma.org, donate. I work very closely with them. But if you're in the Tulsa area and you know somebody who is dealing with those issues, or just want to, if you yourself have a family member, it is something that we offer. I'd love to meet you, talk to you, figure something out. But want to thank everybody for hopping on here today. Sooner Nation, thank you very much, and we will see you soon.
Love.